The international labour community is commemorating World Day for Decent Work. This year's messaging is centred around the call for wage justice. South Africa's labour sector is in a prolonged negotiation over wage increases. The South African Federation of Trade Unions, for instance, is also calling on government to fairly engage with unions in order to find solutions to workers' needs. Our reporter Ziniko Mhlaba is watching the story live to us now from Newtown in Johannesburg. And Ziniko, there are just so many issues to consider as we watch the story while we simultaneously track these negotiations.
That's right, and it's a very, very interesting day, I must say, here in South Africa, considering the fact that the global community, especially when it comes to the labour sector, is calling for wage justice as they commemorate the International Day for Decent Work. Well, things are a bit different today here in South Africa. You don't see large gatherings of trade unions or different parties meeting somewhere for a bigger cause, or to consolidate and make a bigger voice. It seems as if the approach is different. It's more diplomatic this year, and actually where I am, the Mary Fitzgerald Square is usually a buzz when it comes to public gatherings, especially for trade unions. I'm just going to step out of shot so that my colleague Retumes can give you a sense of how empty this is. This is where you'll find your COSATU matches, your SAFTU matches. They will use this place as a starting point, but today they're doing things differently. This day also, and as you said in your intro, that it's happening amid serious, prolonged negotiations between the employer, which is government, and public sector unions over those wage demands. You remember that initially, at the beginning of these negotiations, the public sector unions were demanding 10%, and government said it outly and outrightly that they do not have that money, and the fiscus cannot afford that. So it's very, very tricky and very interesting to now see that there are some contradicting views amongst the unions themselves in terms of should they accept the current offer being put on the table by government, which is that package 7% or that 3% in lower terms, or should they just go ahead and take whatever that's been given, or they will remain with their 10% demands. Well, let's get a sense of how does this day happen in South Africa, or in the context of the South African problems in the labour sector. I'm going to bring in the spokesperson of SAFTU. His name is Trevor Chauke. He speaks for SAFTU. Mr. Trevor, today is a very, very important day, and the theme for this year is centered around wage justice, which is exactly what you're calling for at those public sector wage negotiations. How important is this day? But also give us context. What does it say to you amid the problems that you're having now, government saying it cannot give in to your demands?
Yes, today we commemorate the World Day of Decent Work, or for decent work, in the context of various crises which the South African workers are facing. I mean, throughout the economy, you would have seen with the report which was released in July, August, that about 75% of the 14.9 million workers in the country are earning below 5,800. And of those, most of them are in precarious work, are in labor broking, and are also in outsourcing casualized and temporary work. And these are the problems which the South African workers are currently facing. We are also in the context of not only just the low wages for these particular workers, but also the context of the continued casualization of work, the precarization of the real work in this particular country, where in the transport, the service industry, they continued to ensure that they casualize this type of services. In the public sector, for instance, we are currently faced with the public service workers who are currently demanding a wage increase of about 8 to 10%, whereas government is only offering 3%. Now, these are the contexts in which the South African workers are facing at the current moment.
I mean, let's talk about the divisions now that are unfolding within the unions themselves. If you look at COSATU, it has affiliates who support your demand of at least 8%, and there are those who have said, you know what, guys, we are fine with this 3%, which has been offered by government. So there seems as if the unity that you guys started with is no longer at place now. So how does that then affect your call, and how does it strengthen or weaken that call? And government on the other side saying it cannot afford, it does not have the money that you guys are demanding. And actually, if they were to succumb to your demands, they will not be able to also hire more public servants, which are much needed by the actual population itself. So how do you find balance between all those dynamics?
Firstly, in the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council, we indeed started, you're correct, started with that unity. It broke when others preferred that 3% might be the minimum of what they're demanding, which is what actually forced Treasury to move from 2% to 3%. We, of course, at that time refused to move to 3% and remained at 8%. We are glad that the workers belonging to some of those trade unions have actually decided otherwise against their leadership and against their negotiators. And that's the reason why you see them having rejected that particular 3%. And in the context of that again, we must understand that government has been given various models through which it can fund the 8% to 10% that is demanded by the public service workers.
Mr. Trevor, let's unfold those dynamics and possible solutions throughout the day. We're going to be in touch with you. It's a long day. We'll get into those specifics and the funding models that you want to elaborate on. Well, Ayanda, that's the situation here in Newtown. It seems as if, yes, there are some divisions among the trade unions themselves in regards to whether to take what's been given or to continue with their struggle. So that's it. We'll be speaking to COSATU in a few minutes just to get a sense as well of where they are and how does this day and what does it mean to them as far as the South African context is concerned. Back to you, Ayanda.
Yeah, without a doubt. It'll also be interesting to see what the turnout looks like today, given the levels of disillusionment within various unions. Ziniko Mhlaba, thanks very much indeed. Live just there from Newtown in the Joburg inner city.